We're live.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and declare that we have a quorum and move on to 103 on the adoption of the agenda.
You have
I
to
would
excuse
like
Orlando.
to
I'm sorry.
move that we excuse Mr. Orlando Lewis Jr.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Dr. Albin,
Yes.
Ms. Greco,
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Moving on to 1.03, the adoption of the agenda.
We at this point we want to amend the agenda to include a closed session segment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote.
I'm
Dr.
sorry, who
Thomas?
seconded that?
Penny,
Thank you.
Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Dr. Albin,
Yes.
Ms. Greco,
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Now I'll look for the adoption of the agenda.
With Dr. Alvin, did you motion?
I did.
Ruth did.
Okay. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Dr. Albin,
Yes.
Ms. Greco,
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. We'll move on to 1.04, which is our academic calendar revisions, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Kilbride.
Thank you, Ms. Lonis, and thank you, board members, for coming together on short notice on a Saturday. But we believe this is a very necessary meeting. It's a very necessary topic based on new information that we received on Thursday, right before the board meeting. So, you know, if the timing would have been a bit different, if we could have brought this recommendation to you on Thursday with confidence, would have avoided this meeting this morning. So I apologize for that. But this, much like so much of what we're dealing with right now, is so dynamic and changing that we're doing the best we can with the information that we have. So this morning, I'd like to talk to you about a recommendation for a revision to our approved 2020-2021 calendar. And just want to take you through some of the rationale for why we believe that's necessary. We know that everything we do is connected to our vision and our mission. And I just want to give you a bit of background on the current calendar and then the recommendation that we're making. So the calendar that you approved back in January was based on House Bill 161. And this was tied to the Missouri legislature action that school can start no earlier than 14 calendar days before the first Monday in September. So 14 calendar days before Labor Day. That made August 24th the earliest start date for this year. And that's our scheduled start date for students. This past Monday, our new employees started with a new employee orientation. Returning employees are scheduled to come on Monday, August 17th. Children will be coming on Monday, August 24th. Prior to the modification that you made in January, our regular scheduled first day of school with kids was Wednesday, August 12th. And if you remember in the past, we always made attempts to start the first day with kids in the middle of a school year. When it went to August 24th, it was on a Monday, and that's what's planned. That's the planned first day for kids right now. There was a committee that came together, always focused on attempting to develop a calendar in the best interest of kids and their survey data and so on that go into the decision. So current calendar, August 24th is the start date. Doug? Here's the last couple years of calendars. And you can see that these calendar days and hours were crafted in conjunction with negotiations as a part of working conditions. DESE has removed the reference to days, no longer are there a minimum number of days. For a long time, it was 174. Missouri moved to a focus on the number of hours, and there's a number of hours of 1,044. A lot of that change was made connected to virtual instruction. So student days over the last 2 years, we're scheduled to have 173 student days. The recommendation this morning would be taking us to 168 student days at 6.41 hours per day. The real focus is on the number of hours per year because we had lengthened the school day this year by 10 minutes. So you can see that the change would take the number of hours in a year from 1,110 to 1,078. Instead of pushing the start date back and then backfilling on the back end of the schedule, those 5 additional days, the recommendation is to reduce the number of days and hours for student attendance. The number of staff hours and so on would decrease as well. You can see the teacher hours down below move from 1,403 to 1,364.65. Doug? At play also in this decision, board members, is we have an alternate methods of instruction plan that's been approved by DESE, which essentially removes the need for inclement weather days. So the last student day, those are the dates that are already published. Those are the dates that with no inclement weather days were approved by you in January. The last student day is Tuesday, the 25th. Last teacher day is Wednesday, the 26th. So in this recommendation, we would be just striking those additional days out that would take us into June. Because now with the AMI plan being approved, if we do have an inclement weather day, that will become a virtual learning day for all students from home. That's when we get into phase 2 or into phase 1. If we're in phase 3, all days are virtual learning days. In the calendar, Memorial Day is listed as May 31st. And there's been conversation the last couple of years at the board level around attempting to end prior to Memorial Day. And with this calendar, we'd be able to do that. So the calendar edit for your consideration is connected to the late arrival of devices as the number one reason. We received information on Thursday, right before the board meeting, that we were expecting the 2,000 devices to arrive on Monday. That was amended Thursday, right before the meeting, as worst case scenario Wednesday, best case scenario Tuesday. We received some further information yesterday from our government supplier in Chicago that Wednesday is hopeful now. Even hours that that we're dealing with place a real pinch on the distribution process and the start of the year with students and families. If the devices arrived on Monday, even though it was a tight turnaround, we believe that we could have accomplished device distribution in 2 days. But now that next Wednesday is hopeful, in our ability to have a purposeful, productive first start with device distribution is less and less. And in our meetings with principals and assistant principals, there's so much upheaval and so much change. They feel committed that they want to make sure that the first touch with families is as positive and as planful as possible. So being able to spread out device distribution over an entire week as opposed to 2 days is what the principals and assistant principals are advocating for. And they put together a pretty robust plan as to distributing devices at the elementary level, 1 grade level at a time over the course, if the board would approve, 1 grade level at a time over the course of the week of August 24th. There are a lot of nerves. There's a lot of anxiety. So being able to slow down a bit with students and families, the ability to be more planful and deliberate in that process instead of the touch being, here's your device, here's the paperwork. There's parent training that would be a part of the process. Schools are building in a meet your teacher type of experience into the process as well. And I'd like to give a little bit of praise to Belael Ewing, the new principal at Marion Elementary, who's moved from the high school, and along with Fred Harlan has proved invaluable because Belael ran the one-to-one effort at the high school when device distribution happened the first time in 2016. And so he's bringing a lot of that planning to the table to slow down device distribution and add in those high touch pieces that would just ease some anxiety for people. So the real rationale for pushing the recommendation is the late arrival of Chromebooks and unfortunately just a low level of faith that we have in some of the information that we're receiving from our distribution. I'd mentioned everything being dynamic. We've locked in hard to Monday, and a lot of our plans were based on that. When we got the information before the board meeting that was now only a possibility, and when we got the information yesterday that was even less likely, it forced us to pivot and to come before you this morning and request that we'd move our first day with students back to the 31st of August. Doug? So the device distribution would take place over the course of 5 days. There would be times that would be offered during the day, as well as times that would be offered into the evening for working families, working caregivers. In addition to the devices coming later, we're also getting a lot of additional feedback from staff that they don't feel comfortable nor prepared for the first day of teaching in a tech-heavy environment. There's training that's coming together, but the secondary need is to provide additional training time for teachers. And so how that would be accomplished, the PD team that includes Evelyn Gilliam, Deneen Stewart, Shanae McCoy, and the district PD committee. On those chunks of time that are alternate for distributing devices, half the staff would be involved in device distribution. The other portion of the staff would be involved in additional tech integration, professional development during the week of the 24th. That training would be developed with teachers, with the professional development people here in the district. So should the board choose to approve this modification to the calendar to move the start date back to the 31st, we would message this change out to staff and the community at noon today. And that's part of the reason for the Saturday morning meeting, that if approved, we want to get this message out as quickly as possible. Staff members are still scheduled to come in Monday. There would be a week of PD and staff meetings and so on this coming week. This would be adding an additional week for device distribution when they come in, and PD during the week of the 24th. We've got the alternate calendar mocked up. Doug, if you can jump over to the screen view for that mocked up calendar. So the calendar that was approved, you can see that the week of the 24th would become teacher work days and professional development days. First day for students would be the 31st of August. They would have a full week of virtual learning. Then Labor Day would come in, and as you can see, there would be no disruptions for the rest of the month of September. As a part of the plan, there were 5 early release days district-wide that were built into the calendar. Those 5 early release days would be removed. And as you can see throughout the rest of the year, the rest of the calendar would remain very similar to what you approved back in January. Doug, if you can go to the very end of the school year. Board members, you can see that there are also professional development days that are built into the calendar. Those aren't changed. Those aren't removed. There is a need, and we hear from teachers and from principals, there is a need to continue to develop people around tech integration. So as you can see, there are still days during the year where there would not be virtual learning for students, but there would be virtual learning for teachers. At the end of the year is what I wanted to share. The last day of school for students would be the 25th of May. Last day for teachers would be the 26th. In the past, that had stretched on into June 2nd and June 3rd. But again, because Mike LaChance and Deneen Stewart had gotten the alternate method of instruction plan and the extension plan approved by DESE, no longer is there a need for weather days in the district. So we can be very consistent about the last days for students and for staff. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Dr. Kilbride, I have a question. If a family has a student, let's say in first grade and in fourth grade, would they be able to pick up their devices at one time, or do they have to come back each individual time?
Yeah, so no, for asset tracking, that family would have to go to, if they're at the same school, they could pick up both devices at the same time. So first grade, fourth grade, not an issue, can pick up devices at the same time at the same school. But if a family has an elementary, a middle, and a high school student, the family would have to go to each of the different schools. We're not equipped to be able to have that flexibility with the number of devices on hand, like shifting them to the various buildings. You know, we've got a set number of devices that we're going to be sending to each building. So it might be a little bit of hardship for families that I just can't pick up all of my devices at one district building. If I've got a student at elementary, middle, and high, they'll have to go to the various buildings.
Okay, I've got a question. So our teachers are already contracted for X amount of days, right? And so are you saying that we would not have them start next Monday, that we're taking those 5 days off for the teachers?
No. So teachers would be starting Monday. There's professional development time built in next Monday. And so it would be, no, so the teacher time, they would not be starting later.
Okay, so that chart that you showed us earlier shows us decreasing teaching days, I thought, by 5 days. But that's
so
just,
that has to do, yeah, that just has to do with the back end of the schedule, those potential inclement weather days. So that's like there won't be a need for inclement weather days now with the AMI schedule. We know now that the last day for teachers will be the 26th. That schedule counted in those days in June that we wouldn't have anymore.
yeah, that's not my question. My question is, oh, okay, so you're saying before we had it going into June, so that's where those 5 days came off for them, but they still are
Yes.
required to start on this coming Monday. And then the next week, instead of start teaching on the 24th, they would be doing PD or helping with getting the distribution done of the devices. And then
Yes, ma'am.
actual start date for students to start learning is the 31st.
Yes, ma'am.
So the only change really is for the students as to when they start versus the 24th versus the 31st.
Yeah, it's the change for students, and then the week of the 24th, instead of working with children, the teachers will be learning and distributing devices.
Okay, I think that's good because they've asked for the PD for this, purpose, and so that's good that we're listening and hearing what they want and being able to provide it.
I just had a clarifying question. Did you say that they were coming in the week of the 24th for PD, or is that going to be a week that will be choice if they have reached the certain competency levels?
We've not talked about offering choice during the week of the 24th. That would be a week where there'd be professional development offered to all staff. The team has identified ISTE competencies, but again, this is so dynamic. We haven't talked about allowing an opt-out during the week of the 24th.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Seems like there's enough to do that we need all hands on deck to either hand out the Chromebooks or to hone their skills on their computer.
The shift, the more that we learn about device distribution, the more that we see that more staff members as opposed to less are going to be involved. The initial thinking was that at the elementary level, buildings would have to identify 5 staff members that would be a part of the process. That number has grown to anywhere between 15 and 18 staff members that would be involved at a time in device distribution, which at an elementary school is almost a perfect split, half and half. Half would be distributing, half would be learning.
Sounds good to me. I don't have any more questions.
Sounds
Does
good to
anybody
me.
else have any other questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm
Okay.
just glad to hear that we're hearing that we are being responsive to the staff surrounding the PD. So I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Then all I'll be doing is looking for a motion to accept the start date for students as August 31st.
So moved.
Second?
All right, I will call the vote. Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Dr. Albin,
Yes.
Ms. Greco,
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Kilbride, for your team. And I know it's going to be good for them to get that extra PD in, and also to make sure that our distribution goes very well for our families. So that's good.
And thank you, board members, for your
right, next
willingness
thing that
to
we'll
allow
need
some
is-
flexibility.
That's what this year is going to be about. Being flexible and understanding. That's the only way we're going to get through all this together. So you're very welcome. All right. I need a motion to move into closed session.
So moved.
Second?
I have the motion in a second. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Dr. Albin,
Yes.
Ms. Greco,
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. We are now in closed session.